Hey guys, it's Nif. Today I'm talking about the 4th, 5th, and 6th books in Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn series. They are The Alloy of Law, Shadows of Self, and The Bands of Mourning. First of all, if you haven't read the original trilogy in the Mistborn series, The Final Empire, The Well of Ascension, and The Hero of Ages, you need to go on Amazon, go to your nearest bookstore, go to the library, and get them right now. You'll love them. I'm not going to spoil anything for the 4th through 6th books, but parts of the other ones, you might lose a little something. The Alloy of Law is our introduction to Wax and Wayne, two lawmen from the Roughs that have moved back into the big city. We meet them along with Marcy and her sister Steris. The world is now 300 years in the future of what ended with the Hero of Ages. And all the people that we loved from the original series are now in mythology and lore. While it can be a standalone book, there are probably going to be parts that you'll feel like you missed if you haven't read the original trilogies. You'll just kind of be out of the loop. But if you want to just pick up a book to see if you might like Mistborn set in the Midwest, it does have a very solid beginning and ending. The real start of the Wax and Wayne trilogy is Shadows of Self, followed by The Bands of Mourning, and they're filled with top-notch action sequences along with some really heart-wrenching scenes. One of the moments that I think will stick with me for a while is Steris' speech about how she's never felt like she belonged anywhere and she's always been an outcast, and it really resonated for me. She goes from a pretty one-dimensional character in the Alloy of Law, and by the end of Bands of Mourning, I'm sure you will love her as much as I do now. She became one of my favorite characters along with a Khandra named Milan. I'm really looking forward to the final book in the trilogy to see Steris' growth even more. I loved the first Mistborn trilogy, and to be able to see that world that you already spent so much time in. I think for the audiobooks it ends up being like 75 hours, and to be able to go back to it 300 years in the future. It's something I've never read in a book, that you will have such a wonderful world built and then go back to it in a future time and make those books just as compelling as the original ones. All of my favorite people have titles now and are worshipped, and all the throwbacks just make you giggle, like I knew Finn when she was just a little girl and now she's the Ascendant Warrior. And it's very fun. I think one of my favorite ones is when they mentioned High Imperial, and I'm sure when you get to that point you will laugh as well. The magic system hasn't changed. However, at least as far as we know, there are no more full Mistborn that can burn any kind of metal, and there are no more full feruchemists that can use any kind of metal mine to store some kind of attribute like knowledge or health. Now people, if they're lucky, will get one of either, or the very rare will be what is called Twinborn, where they have one of each. I really enjoy this change just because of how many combinations they are, and they all kind of have fun names. For example, Wax is what's known as a crasher. It's a coin-shot allomancer, which is steel pushing, and a skimmer, which means he can store his weight in a metal mine that he can tap into if he wishes. He likes being light on his feet, so he usually goes around at about 3/4 weight, so that when he needs to, he has a lot of storage to work with. And if you remember from the original series, steel pushing has a lot to do with the person's weight, so it makes Wax a very deadly duelist. There's some very fun fan theory crafted names of what all the combinations would be, so I'll link it in the description so you can check it out. The original Mistborn trilogy was, in my opinion, a very dark read. While a lot of the characters had some very funny moments, there was a lot at stake and you could really feel it. And I think these books kind of act as a counterbalance to that, mostly in large part due to the character of Wayne, who is a Twinborn as well as a master of disguise. He also likes to trade people items, usually without their knowledge and with something they would never want. For example, a large rat's tail. Although apparently it was 2 hands length, so pretty impressive. While the first books are filled to the brim with world building and have an enormous scope, these books are much more for the fun and enjoyment of reading. It's like a dessert before the next big banquet. You also finally get to see what happened on the rest of the planet with everything. The Lord Ruler was moving stuff and doing all sorts of crazy things, and yet we only ever talk about that one, I guess, continent. So you never know what happens on the other side, and finally in these books you get to see. And if you weren't already in love with the characters and setting by the time you finish The Alloy of Law and Shadows of Self, I can almost guarantee by the time you read the last chapter of the Bands of Mourning, you will be head over heels in love with them. Here's a few fun final thoughts to leave you with. Brandon Sanderson was actually doing a creative writing exercise to clear his mind between novels, and that developed into The Alloy of Law. And for you League of Legends players out there, the maniac that Wax and Leslie are fighting at the very beginning of The Alloy of Law is very similar to the new champion Jin. They're both maniac murderers with a very theatrical flair. Jin is even being released with a Western themed skin to fit with Bloody Tam. It's like he changed his name when he joined the League. And finally, as you're reading the books, you should keep an eye out for a Ahhhh cameo. For all the Brandon Sanderson fans out there, you should remember the storyteller from Warbreaker and the King's Wit from the Stormlight Archives. Yep, they're all the same Ahhhh. I really love these books, and I would definitely recommend them to anyone that loved the original series. And if you haven't read the original series, then I would recommend you go get that, and then you read these, because you'll love them. I'm sure you will. Enjoy your book ventures, and I'll see you here soon.